We've done lessons 11 and 12 on format creep and finding the data to do a music meeting. Now on this lesson, we're actually going to do one. All right, ready for a music meeting? Let's do one for real. And let me tell you up front on this, when we do this meeting, I'm going to do it like a general meeting for pretty much most parts of the year, most weeks of the year. Going into the spring ratings period and the fall ratings period, I usually do things a little bit different, and I will do that on the next lesson number 14, which will tag on to this one basically. This will be the main one, the next one will be pretty short. I just want to go through the concept with you of getting ahead of the music, going into a really important ratings book, and also packeting. Packeting is something that you will do on the computer, really hard to do manually, almost impossible actually to do manually, but on the computer, you know, it's an interesting concept and it's a really great thing to understand and know how to do. Pretty easy to actually do it on the computer, a little bit of math involved. I'll go through that again on the next lesson. But for this lesson, the other point that I want to make is that we're going to be using the data that was on lesson number 12, the chart, the AC chart. This is going to be an AC radio station, an AC chart, and also 1 to 19 that I had showed you. We're going to pick it up from there and just keep going. One other thing that it probably helps to point out that you would do this pretty much on any kind of format. The only difference is going to be the amount of rotations and what you choose to do. Like this particular AC station that we're building, which is typical of so many AC radio stations, they have 5 A's, 7 B's, and then some amount of C's. Usually not a whole lot, but it could vary. Now, if you were building a CHR radio station, you probably would not have 5 A's, although you could and play 2 an hour. I should mention that 5 A's played once per hour, 1 per hour, 7 B's played 1 per hour. If you, which would make them come up every 5 hours, obviously, and every 7 hours for the B's. But if you played 2 of those each hour on the top 40, because the station was way more current music oriented, then, if you divide 2 into 5, you get 2.5. So all of a sudden, they're going to be coming around a lot faster. And also some stations, like I had mentioned for you, back ages ago at CKLW, there were 10 A's, but we played 4 of them per hour. Again, the math comes out the same. 2 divided into 5 is the same as 4 divided into 10, 2.5 hour rotations, and they come around roughly every 2.5 hours. I saw some research where the brunt of radio stations are somewhere between, top 40 radio stations, are somewhere between 2 and 3 hours, 2 to 3.25, somewhere in there. And interestingly, the longer the rotation, in other words, the slower the turnaround, for the most part, when you look at the ratings coinciding with it for the station, the slower the turnaround, the higher the ratings. Or to put it in a totally different way, if you had songs repeating every hour and a half, you're going to have worse ratings than if they're repeating every 3 hours or 3.5. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now, just one last thing before we get into this, just in case you have a different type of format. I have done this configuration, 5 A's, 7 B's, and then some amount of C's and other categories. I have done this for a full-on rock radio station, a smooth jazz radio station, an AC radio station, a Format 41 upper AC radio station, an urban AC, an urban oldie station, and also a CHR. The only thing I really haven't done this with is country, and I would suspect, if I had a country radio station to program, I always wanted to do one. I never got a chance to do a country station. Bummer, eh? But if I had a country station to program, I would walk in starting with this, 5 A's, 7 B's, and some amount of C's, and then listen to it and go, is this rotating the way I want it to rotate? And then alter it from that point. And my guess is it would be totally fine, because I've just done this configuration, 5 A's, 7 B's, so many times. I just think it's a really great way to go. And sometimes you can just mess around with it, which will be in the next lesson when we get into packeting. So let's go to the computer and do this. Now, some things that enter into this, we're going to start out with what the station is that I'm building and what it sounds like. And as a frame of reference that you can stream to as it exists roughly is WLTW in New York City. If for no other reason than it's a great radio station and that's how a great AC station should roughly sound in 2021. This is the mythical station that I'm building, and it has these characteristics. Number one, it's fairly up-tempo. It is not a soft AC like 15 years ago. Number two, it's fairly pop. Up the middle, that's the sound of the music. It's pop up the middle, but it leans R&B. It does not lean into guitar-based AC music much. There'll be some, but it's definitely not leaning that way. So if it's going to go one way or the other, coming off that middle pop lane, it is going into R&B. This is a gold-based AC with some current music. It feels extremely familiar, but make sure that it's playing today's hits and keeping the audience current, as much as an adult will stay current. Number four, it's leaning toward women. I would try to pick up men in the audience, but to me, they would be expendable. If I can totally dominate women 25-54, I could care less if I had any men. Just as a point of reference of thinking. But I know they'll be there. I know they come along. You just are not going to get as many men as you have women. And number five, the demo that I would be wanting to dominate, that I would be thinking in my head, is 35 to 44 and then 35 to 54-year-old women. We'll get some 25, 34-year-old women, but I actually wouldn't be targeting them necessarily. I would be definitely watching what they're doing and looking at them and trying to make some sort of decisions in this music meeting about them, but they would not be the target. The last thing, number six, as we're building this mythical station, would be the personality of the people on the air. Now, when I listen to WLTW, and this is great for them, and that's the way they've set their radio station up, and God knows they're super successful doing this, there are people on the air, at least of the shows that I heard. I didn't hear Morning Drive, but I heard Midday and I heard Afternoon. I didn't hear the jocks on that radio station doing very much. They didn't add anything to the radio station. They didn't detract for sure, so that's a plus, but they didn't add anything. I would like to, in a perfect world, have a radio station, an AC radio station that's doing all the things that I'm describing, but it's also the people on the air are also adding another element on top. Now, definitely not a personality where they're getting in the way of the music, that they're not getting in the way of the movement of the radio station, and ideally they're going to be doing things that are clever, that are interesting, that are funny, that give a good feeling to the radio station. They're, again, adding another level in. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle, what is that perfect song that I'm going to try to judge every other song against for the format creep thing? Ended up with Bruno Mars and Marry You. I'll tell you why. It's almost totally pop right up the middle, but it leans a little bit R&B. What it doesn't do, definitely it does not lean toward guitar. It's definitely leaning toward R&B, but it's mainly a pop song. It is definitely upbeat. I mean, it's got a nice beat and it's moving. It's got positive lyrics. The lyrics are fun. It's a happy song. It's a positive song. Most women would love this song. And it is very familiar, like a Gold song, but it doesn't sound overly old. Let's move to the playlist. So this is this week's playlist, and we're going to do next week's. Again, like I mentioned, I just took 1 to 19, and this is what it looks like. Now, let me flip it into an Excel spreadsheet so we can work on this. So this is what it would look like in radio terms. There's the A's, there's the B's, and there's the C's. Again, your taste could be completely different, and even my taste would be completely different if I was building a different type of radio station than I described to you. As you can see, looking at the spreadsheet, the core ideal song, Bruno Mars, there's Marry You. I already told you about that. And then there's 3 other columns. Again, you can make this any way you want. I'm just doing this to explain it to you. You see 3 columns, not core, then tempo, then pass. Now, pass, to me, I'll explain that when I get to it. Well, all I simply did here, because it's really easy to do this, one is I just put the tempo of the songs. You're going to have to do that anyway. So I think Blinding Lights has got a 4 tempo on a 1 to 5 scale. Harry Styles got a 3, and down the line. Now, if you look at the not core, to me, where those X's are, those are songs that I don't actually feel, to me, now other people will feel differently, but I don't feel like they're core to the station that I'm building. It just doesn't feel right to me. Gabby Barrett is a great song. It's really good, awesome top 40 song. I don't know, there's just something about it that irritates me a little bit for an AC format. But as you can see, still playing it, no problem playing it. I just want to be aware that I don't want to get too many of those type of songs. Looking down the core list, you can see more X's. The X's to me are the ones that they just don't feel like they're in there for one reason or another, because clean or not clean, rap in it or not rap in it, and that sort of thing. But I would definitely play them. If you look at where it says pass and those four X's are songs that I wouldn't play at all. And that's different than not core, because you notice if you look back and forth, you're going to see somewhere like Lady Gaga, it's got an X. To me, I don't think it's core, and I wouldn't have played it. I would have passed on it. But then there's other ones like the Josh 685, Dua Lipa Levitating. I would play those. Same thing with Gabby Barrett. The Lady Gaga Rain on Me, I just think that's just a little too CHR. I mean, it's really close to the Ava Max to my ear, but Ava Max just seems prettier. It seems a little sweeter, a little bit more melodic. That fits over on AC. Lady Gaga, to my ear, doesn't. Christina Aguilera is a little too, a little too soap opera-y, down movie-ish to me, to my ear. Although it's great at times on an AC station to have a song that screams you're an adult radio station. There's a Josh Groban song that just came out that I think that would probably fill that bill. I just don't hear this one, so I wouldn't have played it. Same thing with Maroon 5, Nobody's Love. Okay song. I just don't think it'll go any higher than this. Same thing with Pete Muller, and there's so many versions of For What It's Worth. I didn't think it was a good one. Why waste the space? Let's start looking at the charts. Here's the AC chart, and right next to it is the top 40 CHR chart. I like to go through both of them to see which ones are on the top 40 that would probably be moving over at some point to the AC chart, because that's pretty much the progression. So you're going to see the songs coming on the top 40 before they ever get to AC. Looking down the list of top 40, to me the songs that stick out that have a shot at moving are Driver's License, Chris Brown, Ariana Grande with Positions, 24 Golden, The Biebs with Lonely, and In the Weekend with Save Your Tears. Levitating is already going down. So far I think that's pretty much it, those songs. Looking at the actual AC list for this week, everything looks pretty much the same. I mean, a few things have moved around a little, one or two positions here and there, but for the most part, the top 10, top 12 are pretty much the same songs. Something a little new here, jumped on a little bit more, is Bon Jovi, Story of Love, moving up a little bit. I'd want to listen to that. I'd want to listen to the Veronica song, the Josh Groban for sure, and Lee Brice, I'd want to hear what that sounds like, because that's a pretty big jump, 30 to 24. Country, but want to see what it sounds like anyway. The John Legend and the Taylor Swift Love Story. Curious as whether Love Story is that much different from the original one. Obviously, she's done a different version. Moving over now, taking a look at the Apple charts and just taking it 1 to 20. What do we have on here? Again, this is mostly a, all hits from anywhere type chart, but it's good to see if something would be on here that might be a shot. And Driver's License would certainly be one. Save Your Tears would be another one. Going to page 2, I would be wondering about Go Crazy and also Positions by Ariana Grande and Chris Brown. Those two songs, I'd be wondering about those. I want to hear those. And I guess that's it. Billboard's Hot 100, their top 40 chart, which is, again, mainly what this is. Again, wondering about Driver's License, Save Your Tears, Mood, Go Crazy, and Positions. Looking over to page 2, there's Holy and there's Lonely, both by Justin Bieber. At this point, going through the charts and going through whatever research you might have on hand for your own market, or if you have none, rate to music, you're probably ready to move on to listening to songs and from that your music director would have been digging in and getting over the course of the past week. Or maybe it's stuff that you listened to last week and you're taking another shot at it because it didn't quite fit last week. So these are the songs that I listened to. And that's the scores that, at least to my ear, I thought that they deserved. Boy, there's a lot of good songs on here. It could be just my ear, but the ones that seemed the strongest were songs that have great lyrics to them. I mean, they really seem like they're written from a point of passion and really caring about the lyrics as opposed to being crafted. It just seems like they just got spit out of the person. Driver's License and Bieber's Lonely. They're just songs that you're hard-pressed to miss the lyrics. You're hard-pressed to miss everything about them. going through that list, then looking for core and not core, I think Better Now, awesome song, Post Malone. I think it's a little out of core though. I would play it for sure, but I just think it's a little out of core. Same thing with Mood, little out of core. And Hey World, Lee Brice, really nice song. It's a great country song. Matter of fact, it didn't even sound that country actually. But again, out of core. Josh Groban and Angels, that's a tough one to judge because this is an AC radio station. And judging it against Bruno Mars' Marry You, that would be kind of out of core. It's pretty far away from it. Yet at the same time, this is an AC radio station, and AC radio stations at times want to scream, hey, we're adult, we're adult, we're adult. And this song fits the bill for that. So I kind of categorize it as out of core because I wouldn't want too many of these. I don't think that would ever be a problem because there's not that many of them made, but this is where we are. So the 4 out of core songs out of 20 actual songs to choose from. Before we call it a day and start moving songs around for next week's list, I would do one more thing for today. I never got a chance to do this as a PD because these things really didn't exist. Spotify and YouTube, so many people watching songs on YouTube. But today, I would add these in. So I've resorted this list, and I've taken the plays on Spotify and the plays on YouTube and added them together. And when you're looking at this, these are in millions. If you see 1380 for Post Malone and Better Now, that's 1,380,000 Spotify listens. 1,380,000. And on YouTube, 623 million. So people have listened to that song on Spotify and YouTube when you add them together 2 billion with a B, billion times. That is monstrous. And when you go down the list, all of a sudden everything looks a little bit different. Post Malone, then Don't Start Now, Watermelon Sugar, Mood. I mean, obviously the top 40 stuff moves to the top pretty clearly. And they would have been on the top 40 charts longer than the AC charts because everything starts at top 40 and then moves over to AC. So time-wise, a lot of these songs have had a head start of getting there. Especially see that if you look down to like Charlie Wilson Forever Valentine or the Josh Groban or the Bon Jovi Story of Love, they got 2 million total of listens. I mean, that's nothing. In the scheme of things, 2 million against 2 billion, pretty big difference there. If you look from Post Malone down to, I would say, well, for sure, Gabby Barrett, I see as long as those songs will fit sound-wise, these are really safe songs to play. There's a lot of people have heard these songs. They are not going to be like, what's that? Who does that song? Where'd that come from? You're not going to be getting any of that. These are pretty much tried and true, strong songs. These are the songs that I would be strongly looking at for ads for next week or for getting them on the playlist down the road. There really weren't any bad songs on here to my ear. The weakest one to me was really Maroon 5, good to skip to begin with. And the Josh Groban, it really wasn't weak. It was sort of typical of a Josh Groban with the way it would sort of sound. But there was some other great ones. The Lee Brice song is an awesome song, Hey World. And Bon Jovi, Story of Love, that's a really good song. I listened to it the first time and it was like, oh, it was okay. I thought, no, let me try it again. I listened to it a second time. I was like, you know what? This is pretty good because that hook, the Story of Love, the hook of the song was immediately stuck in my head. That's a really good sign. So somewhere down the road, probably will be playing that. But for now, I'd be looking up at that top part of this list to pick and choose from. From here, it's going to be choosing time. Now let's go over and see if we can put all of these pieces into a new list for next week. Take last week, move it around, add some stuff, take off some stuff, and end up with a good list for next week. Now it is time for the moment of truth. It's choosing time for this week's playlist going into next week's playlist. I put this week's playlist up on the left-hand side, as you can see. On the right-hand side is the exact same playlist, except I've yanked out all of the songs that last week I would not have played. If it was me, I wouldn't have played Lady Gaga. I would not have played Christina Aguilera, Maroon 5, and so forth. Okay, I would have yanked those 4 songs out. And that's what the right-hand side now is. It's missing those 4 songs. If I look at core or not core sounding songs, we've just gone from 6 to 2. All of a sudden, it's not a concern. I'm not going to worry about it at all. And as far as tempo, the tempo is pretty much average for an AC, and it's pretty much average for the station. It's basically, roughly 50-50 threes and twos. on a 1 to 5 scale. So if we can just keep it, 50-50, that'd be fine. So that's what I'd be, going and looking at. Now, I've just replaced on the left-hand side, these are the songs that we've listened to, that I've listened to, and along with the tempos and the scores of what I thought that they, sounded like to my ear, as far as having the ability to be on an AC radio station, this particular AC radio station, and whether they would be core sound or not. Again, core, not being in core, does not mean it wouldn't play it. It's just that I just want to keep track of these so I don't have too many of them. Looking at this, starting at the top, driver's license, definitely a CHR song, number 1 CHR song, big. Lonely is a big CHR song. Break My Heart, Positions, Save Your Tears, Gabby Barrett, Post Malone, and so on. Those are the scores, and now I'd be wondering, what am I going to do with that? But before I would do that, I would be looking at last week's chart, minus the songs that we weren't going to play. And I'd be looking over here, on the right-hand side and going, okay, is there anything here I want to change and move around before I do anything else? And to me, that would be yes. I would take this, I would take the Ed Sheeran, and I would move it up into the B's. I would take Gabby Barrett. I would switch her with Taylor Swift. Could actually probably make a pretty good case for actually switching with Harry Styles and Watermelon Sugar, but for the moment, I'm just going to leave that alone. There's another reason to consider why I would not move Watermelon Sugar up with Harry Styles into the A's, because it's going to cause physical ramifications. I mean, one would be that we're going to burn out Harry Styles. He's going to be coming around way too fast because almost every other hour. But if you look at this and you go like, all right, the Weeknd will play 1 hour, the next hour it's Harry. Then Louis Capaldi plays, and then Post Malone plays, and then there's Harry again. And then Weeknd plays, and there's Harry again. Then Capaldi and Malone, and then Harry again. He would be coming around really quickly. The other thing that it would do, that again I mentioned in earlier lessons, and we'll get into it more when we get into the computers, there's such a thing as artist separation, and you're going to set the artist separation for something like an hour and a half or 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, but let's just say it's an hour and a half. That is going to get in the way of this if Harry's coming up that fast in these currents in this particular category. And what it's going to do is it's going to stop any gold song of Harry Styles from playing, because they're going to keep getting blocked out, because current songs almost always plot first on the computer systems. It plots the currents and then tries to fill in the rest of the slots with gold. And in that configuration, the only Harry Styles songs that are going to be playing are these two. If you keep them in different categories with different rotations, one's got 5, one's got 7, everything has a chance to play. One more thing though, I want to bring in the AC chart, and let's look at that one more time. So I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to make it down a little bit just so it doesn't get in the way. Blinding Lights, Weeknd, Adore You, everything seems sort of fine. Gabby Barrett, we've moved down. Post Malone, Break My Heart is still strong. Willow moved up. Watermelon Sugar. This is pretty much our list, which is fine, which is totally good. Levitating is coming down. Bon Jovi is here, something to consider. Savage Love, kind of holding its own, so that's probably around its last legs. Veronica, listen to that song. I don't think it's got a shot. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Olivia Rodrigo, she's showing up at number 26, as is Lonely, coming in here, although this is going backwards. But it's such a these two are such huge songs on top 40. And you go like, man, what do you do with those? Looking at this, I think I would start to pare the list down. I wouldn't go to 19 songs. I would probably pare it down to maybe 18 or even 17. Let's just see where we end up here. I think Olivia Rodrigo, I would play that song. So let's put that in. I put The Weeknd and Save Your Tears in. I would take a shot with that. And my instinct at this point would be to add Post Malone Better Now, or the Justin Bieber Lonely, or the Ariana Grande Positions. I would be leaning toward doing those, but on a normal week, I think I would sort of wait. Again, as I mentioned on the next lesson, we're going to talk about packeting and preparing for a rating book that's coming up, pretty soon, one of the important books, the spring or fall book. And I would do that a bit differently, because I would take Driver's License, Lonely, Positions, The Weeknd, Post Malone. Essentially, I would be taking the songs that we weren't playing all the way down to 13, maybe even Chris Brown also, but looking at them and going, I want to get these in here. I want to get them in on a really slow rotation. And how would I do that? What's the configuration? But that's next lesson. That's not this lesson. This lesson, I want to keep it simple. And I just want to put in strong songs that I think will end up going higher. So I think Driver's License, Save Your Tears, I think they're going to be higher on an AC list. One last thing that I think that I would do, depending on the market, and this will be a decision as to whether you think Bon Jovi typically on an AC station does well in your market or does not do well in your market. I'm going to go with the position that he does do well in your market. That women, again, this is a woman's leaning radio station, really love him and really like his music and everything about him. And the storyline of this particular song is amazing if you have a family and kids and all that sort of stuff. So, here's the thing. I know this is going to sound weird, but would be what I would do. I think this song is going to be screaming, this is an adult radio station. This is a heritage act, Bon Jovi. It's a song where the lyrics go adult. All of that being said, I don't think this is going to be a big song. I literally don't think this song is going to be able to get above maybe 10 or 9 or 11. I just don't think. I think it's going to be one of those mid-chart songs, but I'm going to take it for the moment, and that's what I would do. So let's move it over. There we go. So I think that would be the list that I would be doing. And in looking at this, I think I would say that Bon Jovi actually is not core. It's not a core song. Obviously going to play it. But given the guitars and all that other stuff, again, not that the guitars are bad, but it isn't a pop song leaning R&B. It's missing the lean part. So I would say this is out of core. And I would take that 19 songs and take him down to 18 songs. So I would cut the list a little bit. Now, something to consider on this, and this is a hypothetical station, and I don't really know because we never really have gone through that yet. I don't know what the rotations are for these particular categories. I would assume going into this that an A category would be there's one per hour and they're coming up every 5 hours because there's 5 songs. There's probably one B per hour and they're coming up every 7 hours because there's 7 songs. Now there were 7 Cs, but they're not going to be rotating as fast as the Bs. So 7 songs in the Bs, 7 songs in the Cs. I mean, there's no way they're rotating the same on a typical station. So I'd make the guess that these are coming up the Cs every other hour. So 7 songs, all of a sudden it's a 14-hour rotation. So the rotations are 5 hours, 7 hours, 14 hours. It seems, sort of reasonable to be. Now I've just cut them by 1, so now it's 5 hours, 7 hours, and 12 hours instead of 14. So the Cs are coming around a little faster, but still 12 hours. I mean, a 12-hour rotation, that's not all that fast. Basically, it plays one time in the daytime, one time at the night each day. The odds of somebody hearing the song played twice in a day are pretty nil. So how do we do here? So we went from 6 non-core, now we have 3, not a big deal. We've gone from a tempo of 57.6 to, let's see what this is, going to turn out to be 55.6. Not much of a drop, so I wouldn't worry about it, but it's interesting just to see where that happened. We replaced Gabby Barrett 2-tempo with Taylor Swift 2-tempo, so it wasn't there. We put Ed Sheeran up from the C's, we put him up into the B's, so that he's got a 2-tempo, but we took out a 4-tempo, Lady Gaga. So that would definitely make a difference. And we also took out 1, 2, 3 2s. So we took out 3 2s, and what we added in was 2 3s and a 2. As you can see, the math makes a big difference because the 4-tempo on Lady Gaga being in the B's, even though we added 2 3-tempos in the C's only turn half the amount of the B's, as far as rotation, and we matched a 2 for a 2 with a Bon Jovi. It knocked us down. For format creep, it's very easy to creep out of the area that you think you're in, whether it's tempo or core or non-core. But anyway, this is so small that I wouldn't worry about it. To me, it's totally fine. And this would be next week's playlist. Ooh, a lot there in that lesson, eh? A lot to go through, a lot to remember. Hope you got a lot out of it. And as always, it's great for you to subscribe to the channel for a couple reasons. One, it makes it easier for you to find it when you go to YouTube. That's number one. And number two, it makes it easier for other people to find the channel, because if somebody's searching for something related to radio, YouTube algorithm is going to pick up the amount of people who have subscribed to this and go, hey, this appears to be interesting to them. Maybe it'll be interesting to this other person who's searching for radio things or watching something about radio, and it'll start to come up as a suggestion along the side, and then that person may look over and go, let me go see what that is. So, everybody gets helped along the way. Anyway, until our next lesson, see ya.